Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm James.
And welcome to the Cornwall Property Podcast, where every week we bring you the latest news, hot topics and guidance around the Cornwall property market.
Stay tuned to be informed, inspired and to have any of your property related questions answered by trusted local property professionals.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
We're back, episode 9 of the Cornwall Property Podcast here at the Cornwall Channel Studios. So, let's get cracking. So, those that are new to listening, I'm Dan.
I'm James.
And we are here bringing you information about the Cornwall property market, trying to help educate, inspire, share opportunities, and mainly to try and help tackle this housing crisis that we have going on in our county at the moment.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for all your lovely feedback. As always, we are here to help in any way that we can, and even if you're not too sure about property, just send us any questions you want, because we are here to help and enlighten you and give education where possible. So no question is too much.
Brilliant, exactly that. So the structure of today's podcast, simply, we've got a couple of news stories we want to share with you, topical news stories for Cornwall and in general within property, the property market in general. And then we're going to share with you our picks of the week, essentially. So I will be choosing a commercial property that's currently on the market here in Cornwall that is currently empty, that can be restored and brought back to the housing market, or brought to the housing market from commercial to residential, to help bring those numbers back. And then James here has got a residential property that we're going to be looking at as well, which is currently derelict, that we can add some value to and bring back to the Cornwall market.
Yeah, quite a juicy opportunity, that one. And it's at a good price as well. So look forward to sharing that with you guys.
Excellent stuff. So let's kick it off. So what my first headline that really caught my eye recently is here. It says dozens of homes in Cornwall are illegal to live in and are being currently left to rot. So this is actually from Cornwall Live. And alarmingly, these are houses that are not legally allowed to be occupied. So it's all well and good having a property that's empty. It could be lived in if someone moved in. May not be great quality or standard, but these are actually prohibited. They're not allowed to be lived in because mainly they're not safe and fit for purpose. So quite alarming. Now, the numbers, there's 26 of these properties in Cornwall currently, so they are not allowed to be occupied. So it's 26. Now, this doesn't sound like a massive number, but to give you a bit of context, that's gone up from 20 from 2020. So from 2020, it was 20. So we are currently now, new year, 2022. These stats have come out from October last year. So they've just been released, but 2021, as of 2021, there were 26 prohibited properties in Cornwall. So again, owners, they've not brought them up to scratch. They've just allowed them to rot. And again, these are properties that should be on this market. So we could be bringing these properties back to life. So these are examples of, again, how properties, we've got a big issue here for those that haven't been following previously. We have identified that there is a massive, well, not just us, the county, everyone's identified, there's a lot of people on the housing register needing homes. We've got a lot of properties in Cornwall, derelict, not used, that can be brought back to life and help house those people in need. So here is another example and really alarming figures. So if I read a couple of stats here that I've got. So the most common reason for these properties being derelict or unprohibited with regards to occupation is because they're unfit for human habitation. So you can't physically, they're not allowed. Maybe they haven't got bathrooms, they haven't got kitchens, or maybe they haven't got anything. The roofs might be falling in. Things like that is literally just left
Dangerous.
to rot. Yeah, awful. So it's understandable, and it's good that they have been signed off as unfit for purpose, but we need to be bringing these back to life. So the council, what they've been trying to do is empty properties that have been empty for 2 years or more, they are now starting to tax, or they have been for a little while now, but they're taxing double the council tax. So I think it's a good idea, but I think what the council needs to be doing is waking up and realising, well, look, if, for example, say James owned a property that's been empty for 2 years or more, the council are going to say, well, look, we need to incentivise James here to get this property back on the market for us. Well, how do they do that? Well, they're chucking a double the council tax charge at James now, which I think is, great, because we need to be penalising and fining these people for this, because it's their duty. They own the property. They should be either selling it if they can, or doing something about it. So I think it's a good thing. But what we're finding an issue here being is that, say, Dan here purchases the property from James, and James is currently having to pay double the council tax because he can't let it. Well, Dan here wants to purchase the property. He wants to bring it back to the market and update it and legalise it. Well, as long as they acknowledge that when Dan is buying this property and is going to be doing all this work to the property, as long as then I'm in this instance, I wouldn't be penalised for it as you have been, because I'm trying to do the right thing here. I'm trying to bring it back to the
Absolutely.
market.
And, who knows what you might want to do. Let's say, for example, you were having to apply for planning permission on that.
Yeah.
As you say, how are you incentivised if you've got to wait 4 to 6 months for the planning to go through whilst you now own the property, and you've got to pay double the the council tax?
Yeah.
I mean, in some places that can be quite expensive. You're looking at maybe £300 as a double figure for 6 months. It's going to put you off, isn't it? So it doesn't really help. What we're trying to do is tackle the housing crisis in Cornwall.
We were speaking to someone recently, and they've just purchased a block of apartments that are all derelict. No one's living in those apartments, and I think it was 6 or 7 apartments, and of those 6 or 7 apartments, I think six of them are being charged double council tax.
Massive.
So massive. Now they change ownership. The new owners have still got to pay that double council tax. Now they might be a 4 or 5 month development to bring them back to scratch, but 4 or 5 months worth of double council tax, that could be like £6,000-7,000 a month. It is absolutely crazy. So where's the incentive for people to bring these back up to market? So these are just, again, I think it's a really good idea with the council tax double charging to encourage people to bring them back to market. But I think we just need to make sure we've got that kind of sussed out there. But to give you another figure here, James, so recent figures state that at the end of autumn in 2021, there were 4,325 homes standing empty across Cornwall.
Wow.
Okay, and of those, 2,415 have been left unoccupied for at least 6 months. So some staggering figures there, and clearly they need to be sorted out.
Yeah, and also a lot of opportunities.
Exactly that.
Also quite exciting.
So yeah, that news story is from the Cornwall Live website, and all the links will be thrown onto the show notes for here. So if you're on YouTube, listening to us on the podcast app, your chosen podcast app, you can go onto the show notes and you can access these news stories via the links we've left on there. So my second one that caught my eye was headline number 2 is from This Is Money. So this is a website, This Is Money, and the news article is all about slowing house prices in 2022. So this year, 2022, obviously doesn't sound like rocket science, does it really, when you compare it to last year? We saw some unprecedented figures. There was on average a 10% growth in the property market last year throughout the country.
Staggering.
Big time. And if we were sat here this time last year, so January 2021, I think main predictions were very little growth, if not negative growth. So it would fall. But 10% increase throughout, and 5% increase on overall rent fees throughout the country as well. So again, staggering. So it's not going to be rocket science to think that it's going to slow a little bit. That can't surely be continuing. So This Is Money. They've got a couple of reasons why they believe this is going to be the case. So throughout the last few years, there have been further surcharges thrown at overseas investors, which personally I don't think is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing to try and encourage more people within the UK to purchase UK property. So what they've done is they've added a 2% surcharge to stamp duty charges. So if you're purchasing property from overseas, you'll be charged an additional 2% on stamp duty to try and deter and put people off and make it a little less attractive for those. So that's one reason they think that the figures will slow. Another reasons are potential changes to no-fault evictions. So there's Section 21 within the tenancy and the rental market. So those that aren't familiar, I'll try and make it as simple as possible, not to patronise, but just to hopefully make it digestible. But Section 21 is if you're going to evict, if you've got a tenant or you are a tenant and your landlord issues a Section 21, it's generally a no-fault eviction, whereby no fault of your own, the landlord's trying to sell the property perhaps, things like that. They may offer a Section 20 or issue a Section 21, which means that you're being evicted from the property that you're living in at no fault of your own. But with that clause and that act, it can be done. But there's talks that act may be scrapped this year. So again, This Is Money. The reporters here are saying that might be a little key bit of information that might deter people from maybe going into buy-to-let market. Another one here is the potential increases to the stringency, should I say, how stringent they are around EPC ratings, so energy performance certificates. So as we know, we're trying to go green. The UK, we're trying to lower our carbon emissions. So by doing that, there's incentives now, and James has touched upon it on previous podcasts as well, and it might be something that we can touch again in a bit more detail in future. But there are more incentives now out there to encourage owners, homeowners or developers or investors, etc., to make their properties more thermally efficient. So your EPCs, they're trying to encourage this. For example, mortgage companies are now giving better interest rates to those properties that have better EPCs. It's similar to I relate this to the car emissions. The more economy friendly, eco-friendly your car is, electric cars, you're not being taxed as much. And similarly, they're looking down this sort of route with the EPC side of things. So the more eco-friendly your home is, the less you're going to be charged potentially on particular mortgage products. So again, these are just different reasons. And again, these are just little reasons why it is predicted that the growth will slow this year. So,
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. I mean, from an investment point of view, that's always good for an investor if house prices are going up, post your development. But I also think, we need to be thinking about, the country's buyers, the first-time buyers. I'm going to come on to some figures shortly with my finance updates. But I think it's been very hard for a lot of people also to get onto the housing ladder in the past few years because, house prices, are very, very high. And it's really difficult to be able to save that deposit. So if things do start slowing, I think that will be only good things to come for first-time buyers.
For sure, which is what your first news story is about, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we go through some of the finance stuff, and as I always say, and Dan as well, that always seek professional advice when buying property. But one of the first headlines that caught my eye was that first-time buyer numbers top 400,000 for the first time in 15 years. So that's since the last recession, and I think that's a really, really positive sign to finally see that first-time buyers can get on the market. On the ladder, but previously in the last couple of years deposits were really, really high, but finally we're actually starting to see some kind of ease now that there are 5% deposits available and 10%. I know 2 years ago the minimum amount you had to put is £15,000 down. Now if you look at where you're on a sort of £200,000 average house price, that's a lot of money for, two individuals or a single person to sort of bring together on their own. So I think that's really, really positive. Some other facts that I've got here. This is the highest number since the financial crash in 2008, when the average transactions for first-time buyers hovered around the 200,000 mark. So that's, over double. The exact amount actually was 408,379 in 2021. So things are going in the right direction for first-time buyers. And it's also sort of said the reasons for this is falling unemployment, low borrowing costs, and low deposit schemes are said to be the drivers of the healthy increase. And we all know last year was very, very attractive where they had the stamp duty relief.
Oh, there's a massive amount of stimulus in the market. So, yeah, it's no surprises, I suppose. But at the same time, you've got to take action and make use of that, haven't you?
Yeah.
So, no, fair play. And that's great. Brilliant. Because these are targets that are set by the government. And that's what we want to be seeing is people buying their own properties. Brilliant.
Absolutely. And this brings me on quite nicely to my second headline with, affordability. Now, is it a surprise or is it not a surprise? For me, I knew that the base rate was going to change at some point from when we last did our podcast prior to Christmas. And rest be assured, we saw it happen. 0.25% increase in December. Dan, was that a surprise to you?
Well, no, to say it's been they were talking about it for months, weren't they, previously as well? And they were flirting around the figures, but no, not surprised at all. Not surprised at all. And it needs to happen, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Bank of England and to the press has unexpectedly raised interest rates for the first time in 3 years amid growing concerns over inflation. So inflation was a major point because since they got the Omicron variant, they were going to actually put on hold the bank base rate increases and wait till the spring. But because of inflation, they were so worried that's was the main driver for it going up. The increase will add to financial pressure on households with variable mortgage rates, so people that are coming to the end of their, they've never been on a fixed term, they've just been following the base rates, it's the affordability there, so their rates are going to go up. And we all know what's been happening with energy prices. Gas prices actually doubled in the last year, which has put a lot of houses under strain. Now this, base rate increase, so people on variable rates are going to struggle with that as well. And also, with inflation at the highest rate for a decade, the bank warned there was unlikely to be any reprieve over the winter month for soaring energy costs, driving up from the rate from 5.1% to the present now at 6%, and then thinking that it's going to go up to 6.5% in the spring. So, with gas prices doubling, they still think that they're going to be, increases to 6.5%. And the government actually had a target, Dan, of 2%. So they're behind by treble. I mean, what's your views on that?
It's just, where does it stop? When do we stop? It just, for the people, especially I think those on the variables as well, really need to make sure they're on the market. They know what they're doing. They know their numbers. But it's difficult, and you can understand why people are worried and people are concerned. And again, it's just, you've just got to budget. That's my massive advice: is if you get a chance, go over your numbers, find out what you've got coming in every month. Hopefully you should do this regularly anyway. I know I do. Just what have you got coming in income wise? What are your outgoings? Where could you maybe cut some of your income, your outgoings? Just save yourself a little bit here and there. It will make a big difference over the long term. But yeah, it's a real shame, especially when you're paying more but not seeing anything different in your life, are you?
Absolutely, and we all know sort of, for landlords that have HMOs, house of multiple occupation, where the landlord is paying the bills, so they give each room at an all-inclusive price. But for, you've seen it before, Dan, like people in the summer, tenants, because they're not paying for the bills, they're not precious, so they've got the heating banging out in the
But
in
you
the
can
summer
see where it's
months.
going to go, though, don't you? It's the landlord will never lose out, because what the landlord do, well, naturally, the rents are just going to go up. So it's just going to end up making things even worse than they already are. So yeah, real shame. But again, it's not a lot we can physically do about it. We just have to learn to budget ourselves, work at different ways around it, and do the best we possibly can.
Absolutely, but we shall see over the next coming months whether that base rate is going to have another increase or not. But I think people need to be prepared for that, because all of this money that's been borrowed for the pandemic, it's got to be paid back somewhere, and we all know it goes back to the taxpayer.
This is it. Right, so moving on. We're going to now just quickly go through two properties that have caught our eye this week. And I am going to go for a commercial property, and James is a residential. So if you are viewing watching the podcast on YouTube or any video channel, then you can see on the screen the property. If you can't see it, if you go again into the show notes wherever you're listening to us, you can access the Rightmove links, and you can see these properties in your own time. So first property that caught my eye is it's a lovely commercial property in Helston. It's a beautiful period property, and it is currently, its use class is as office space. So these are offices in Helston that are not being used, empty offices. So if I go through a few photos for those who are able to watch, you can see here beautiful period property, some old sash windows. It's got some garden space as well. Period features inside with cast iron fireplaces, some lovely views in certain aspects, but again, real prime position there. So really caught my eye because I personally love these period properties. So it's on the market for 350,000. It's on with Stratton Creever. And the key bit of information here, I personally, it might be a little bit steep, but the reason they're pricing it at what they have, they're arguing that they've now got planning for this conversion and change of use from commercial to residential. So it is currently an empty commercial building. They have got planning in place to bring it back to its original use, which would have been a residential property, and is planning now in place for the use of a 3-bedroom house and a 1-bedroom apartment at the rear as well. So again, an opportunity here to bring an old empty property in Cornwall from the commercial market over to residential, and can house potentially 4 people, 3 in the house and 1 in the bedsit or more. So again, just thought it was a nice opportunity there for someone potentially.
Does look good. I would be surprised to see what price that actually does go for, because like you said, I think it is a little bit top heavy, but I can see why the justification there is with the planning permission already granted.
Massively. A lot of the hard work is already done, but you've got to make sure you do your due diligence as always, and get the surveyor around there, check it. It's not listed, which is good news as well, so some hurdles there you haven't got to worry about, but it's an old building that there's bound to be a few curveballs thrown in there when you're starting the refurb. But
it does mean we can get it brought back to the Cornish market, which is nice.
That. Right, that brings us on to your residential, James.
Yeah, I've got quite a nice opportunity here. It's on 8 Roach Road in Stinnerleys, just north of St Austell. It's a 4-bed semi-detached property. Just be warned here, well, not so much warned, but it is an auction price. And when I say the warning there, they always put the guide price, quite low, because the idea is to get, bums on seats in the auction. So they put an attractive price in there, but the reality is it'll probably go for quite a bit more than 140,000. But that also does depend on who's in the auction room and who's wanting to buy and the demand there. But like I say, it's a development opportunity. It's a full renovation, which gives a chance to add value, of course, and bring back to a good size 4-bedroom family home. And it's got the massive assets there of a nice garden and parking as well. It's also got a couple of notes on there, which is quite nice to know. It's clear of a mining search and Mundic test. These are quite often problematical issues that investors kind of are a bit worried about when buying at auction, but have that already there on the details is quite nice. But I think this could be worth quite a bit more than, even if it went from 160 to 180, I think there's still money to be made on that deal.
For sure, yeah. And it's currently on, for those interested, it's on with the auction house, Devon and Cornwall, and it is on an online auction on the 17th of February. But again, it's one of those, I really hate listings where they don't put the floor plan. I just really want to see the floor plan of this one.
Yeah.
Because it looks...
I think it's quite good though in a way, because it does incentivise you to go out there and see it. So many times I see on like Homes Under the Hammer where people actually, they bid on properties that they haven't even seen.
Oh,
which
sure.
is, yeah. But I know what you mean though.
That bathroom is huge. But no, yeah, brilliant opportunity there. Some great value to be added. But again, you can see here, EPC band of an F, so it's a very low EPC. Some great opportunity there to add some value just in upgrading thermals. So fantastic. Yeah, well, brilliant. Well, that brings us to the end of today's podcast. So again, thank you so much for listening. If you want to follow us, you're more than welcome to follow us on Facebook at the Cornwall Property Podcast. You can catch us on YouTube, Spotify, your chosen podcast media. James, how can people get in touch with us if they've got any questions for us?
They can go onto the website, cornwallpropertypodcast.com, and as always, as Dan said, you can go on our Facebook page at Cornwall Property Podcast and just send us a message on there. But we look forward to always hearing any interaction with our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, brilliant. And we urge you just to please subscribe, leave us a little review, and hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. Thank you for listening.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye now.